Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is finally here. It is time to do Trap Game Discourse. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name's Elliot, Smithy Blackman on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Trap Game Discourse. That's right. It is time to discuss what a trap game is. No one seems to understand it. I can very simply explain to you what it is. It's this. It's this thing we have on Saturday. Will it bite us? I doubt it, but we'll dig into the game. We'll dig into the team news. The team news is really, really good or really, really bad, depending on the meaning of words, depending on what the word is means. We'll have to see. I will be talking later on in the show about I think it's fair to say Byzantine quote from Mikel Arteta that I'm still trying to parse. But we will also talk a little bit about City Liverpool and its importance, where we stand in the title race, our historic dominance, and we have some time to talk to you about Gyökeres, Ferguson, and Sesko, the three that Ornstein linked us to a few days ago, because we got time to discuss that. Why not? We are going with a skeleton crew here, still tremendously talented crew, I must say, myself not included, but Paul unavailable, Tim unavailable, Clive unavailable. Now, Clive and Tim will be on the Patreon pod tomorrow. We're going to do 3 big questions, so we will have a really fun Patreon pod tomorrow, so you can check that out. We did cover Ferguson and Gyökeres with David Hartrick, who is a Brighton and Championship reporter and / fan who had some really, really interesting things to say about that, along with Caicedo and Ben White and Leo Trossard. So stuff that you might want to get stuck into, as they say over there. But you're over here. And since you're over here, it is my absolute delight to introduce friend and regular contributor to the pod, Phil Costa. You can find him on Twitter at _Phil Costa. Hello, Phil Costa.
Hello, Elliot. How are we doing?
I mean, I'm usually, when we record, I'm like halfway into my first cup of coffee. I'm deep into the second cup now. And so first of all, the good news is I've got the 1.5x speed talking thing going. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling ready. And I'm very excited to talk to you about what is a trap game. How about you?
I'm good. Whatever you and Clive had in terms of illness over the last week seems to have made its way over to Berlin. I was down quite bad this weekend, I have to say, and trying my best to pass a late fitness test for the 30 on Monday. And I sent Andrew a voice note on Monday morning, and I just sounded like death. And yeah, so that didn't happen. People are trying to take my job now, so I'm back, and even if I'm not 100% fit, I'm still here and ready to talk football. So excited. Yeah. I've got the call up.
Let's be honest, right? Like, we don't need you fully fit now. We're just rounding into full fitness for after the international break when the City game comes around, right? We, like the squad, are targeting that as the time to round into full fitness. We want to be fit for the run-in. We don't need to be fully fit now. I do want to mention, so something really exciting, actually, some serious news here before we get started with the very serious business of discussing Arsenal. Phil, you've obviously written about football for a long time, scouted football, watched all the football. I say Tim has sort of an encyclopedic knowledge of history of Arsenal, and I feel like you have an encyclopedic knowledge of just the world of football. And so it is no surprise that you are going to be debuting your own podcast that you'll be hosting, and really looking forward to it, coming out in a couple of weeks. It'll launch around the interlull and covering general football. So it's not just going to be Arsenal. And I do think that there is a dearth of what I would consider high quality general football conversation out there. There's a lot of, "Oi, do United suck?" or "Hey, here's why Ange is the greatest thing ever." And there's a bit of that, but I think what you want to do is a little bit different. So can you tell us a little bit about, what you want to do with this pod? Because I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been very lucky to be able to contribute to 2 huge Arsenal podcasts. Arsenal is my club. I've supported them for my whole life. But as you said, my kind of job has involved me speaking about more general football, world football, European football for a long time now. And it's something that I've followed for a long time. I'm really passionate about it. I really enjoy talking about young players. I think the European game has so many interesting leagues and stories to delve into. And it's something that I would like to do well, and not just, my issue is surface level analysis and punditry, because that helps nobody. And I think if you're going to do something, you should do it well. So if you're talking about why Athletic Club have a Basque only policy and why they're so successful, you need to be finding someone who cover that team and that region specifically, and that's the exciting part, because you get little anecdotes, insights that you wouldn't normally get. And that is effectively my goal for this podcast, is to really give a detailed look into specific subjects and topics, while, bringing my knowledge into play as well, and to kind of bounce off some people. And, I know people have busy lives, podcasts up the wazoo. Every day it's difficult to find time to listen to everything, but just wait and see. I think we'll have some good bits and pieces for you, and I'm really excited to dive in.
I am as well. I know you mentioned that you want to talk about sort of the lost generation of Parisian talent that PSG didn't get and what happened over there. And of course, the Copa America and the Euros are this summer. And having done the Euro daily with you and World Cup daily with you, I don't think anyone covers those tournaments better than you do. So I'm excited to hear it. So really looking forward to it. Obviously, we'll share more with people when you put that out. And if you're okay with it, when you have an episode or two out, we'd love to throw it on this feed too, so people can get a listen.
I'd be delighted to. And as I said,
right.
or as you said, Euro Daily, get ready, folks. We're back. We're back and better than ever. I'm ready to kiss my social life away for a month.
Just so much bright young English talent that Gareth Southgate can't wait to stick on the bench in favor of Jordan Henderson. Just cannot wait for that. That is going to be a lot of fun to discuss. Okay. Well, back to the usual routine. We're going to talk Arsenal a little bit. And I think let's start with this. It's a little silly, but I think it is legit. A lot of people will ask me, like, what is a trap game? And or they know what a trap game is, but I think there's confusion. And this is quintessential trap game in the sense that, look, this is a game we have to win, of course, but it is at home. It is against a team down bad. Basically, their entire back four is injured. They're in a really bad moment. We're in an unbelievable run of form where it will be presumed that we will just steamroll them. And we know that we've got this long layoff coming. At the other end of it is City. But on Tuesday, we play Porto in an absolute must-win game that is poised to be a real, almost make or break moment for the season in a way, just in terms of the mood and the mindset. The manager will certainly be thinking, who do I pick on Saturday, with an eye towards being fresh on Tuesday? The players will not want to miss that key moment on Tuesday. And that sets up for the kind of situation where you can overlook a weak opponent. So do you think that there is any danger of that? Do you think that that's the kind of stuff that fans discuss but doesn't become an issue in a dressing room on a pitch? How much do you think the Porto game looming on Tuesday and sort of our presumptive win due to current form play into how the manager is going to have to really work to keep the players focused on this fixture?
It's interesting. To be honest, I think Arteta and his staff are quite singular in their approach. I don't think there will be a lot of looking ahead to Porto. I think the sole focus will be on Saturday, because it's A, hugely important, and B, the next game, right? We need to win the next game. You can speak as much as you like about our form post Dubai, how well we've played, the 31-3, goal differential, all of that's amazing. But the next game is always the most important thing in football. And Porto, yes, is obviously super important. It could arguably make or break our season, but there will be no complacency heading into this game. I know we've had maybe a slightly easy run in recent weeks with Burnley, with obviously Sheffield United as well, who, look, if they are in the Premier League next season, I will give you £200 million of my greatest imaginary money.
They won't be, so you can keep your imaginary money and spend it on the metaverse. You're fine. You buy some real estate in the metaverse. You're not spending that money.
And I do think Brentford don't exactly fall into that department of Burnley and Sheffield United, but they've had a really difficult season. I remember this fixture last season. I was there actually in person to watch it, and obviously the result was slightly controversial, to be generous, with VAR forgetting to draw the lines. But Brentford gave us a real game. Ivan Toney in particular gave Saliba a really difficult afternoon, although David Raya was a big part of that with his long distribution, and he won't be playing for either side on Saturday. So that's also something to consider. But they come to the Emirates on Saturday in 15th, 6 points above the relegation zone. But their form since December has been really, really terrible. 2 wins in their last 13, 1 win in their last 7, if you want to narrow it down, compared to Arsenal, who have won 7 of their last 7. I know you like to push this trap game narrative. But for me, this is a team that are just, in terms of Arsenal, this is a team that are on a completely different trajectory, stratosphere to Brentford. They have been decimated by injuries, and I know complacency cannot run into your game, into your mentality, but it's one that I'm expecting Arsenal to turn up to, play well, and our quality should be enough on the day. But I'm open to your rebuttal.
I don't think I have a rebuttal. I think I agree. I just think that it's human nature, right? It's human nature to look at Porto on Tuesday and think that's the big game we have coming up. And to feel we've been so good, we'll find a way through this game. But you have to actually play the game. And it starts with the manager a little bit, right? I mean, first of all, Ramsdale is going to start, and he's great. But little things can change chemistry, right? All of a sudden, Gabriel wants to go back to the keeper, and he's not standing in the left half space, right? Or Saliba's put under a little bit of pressure, and Ramsdale's maybe in his 6-yard box. I'm not saying Ramsdale can't touch the ball, but he's in a slightly different space. It can start with something simple like that. And, what happened to us last season, as we saw in some of these fixtures that we thought would be easy, Bournemouth at home, which ended well, Southampton at home, which didn't. It's an early mistake that gifts a team a goal to hold on to that changes these games a little bit. Now, you could spot Brentford a goal, and I'd still fancy us to win this game. But you have to go out and you have to do it. So it's not that I think we'll fall into the trap. I do think, though, that Mikel's going to have to be thoughtful about Tuesday. Most of these players, since they've been playing once a week and won't have to play again for another couple of weeks, can probably manage Saturday, Tuesday. One player who I would probably prefer not to use in this game and have ready for Porto is Jorginho. I don't think Thomas Partey is ready to start a game. He certainly didn't look it with his, I would say, I think it's fair to call it a rusty and understandably rusty performance when he came on against Sheffield United. So you could go back to Rice at 6 and play Kai and Odegaard at 8 and Trossard at false 9. Or, I don't think Jesus is ready to start. But then you run into the problem of, like, when we've done that, sometimes ball progression's been an issue and we've looked a little stodgy. So it's like, would you just play the team that's been all conquering, stick with it, don't change it, stay red hot, and use it again for Porto and hope they can have all the energy they need for that game as well? Or are you going to make a few changes, probably most notably Jorginho, with an eye towards being as fresh as possible for Tuesday?
One thing I will say is that this season, the team feels a lot more welcoming to change. I think last season, our style of play and basically our starting 11 was so settled, so automatic in terms of their relationships, the chemistry. It was so settled that as soon as you took one piece out of it, we looked unstable. We looked like strangers sometimes on the pitch. There was a nervousness to how we were operating. This season, I don't really feel that way. I think you can maybe put a Trossard in at false 9 or on the left and would still be as good. I think you can take Jorginho out and put Rice as the 6. We'd still be as good. The point you made about Ramsdale, yes, we know that he made a few mistakes last season. Nobody needs to tell him that. I'm sure that's in the forefront of his mind because essentially that's what's lost him his place. But with a back four that's settled, I think our central defenders in particular have been so strong. We protect the goalkeeper amazingly well. I don't think it will be an environment for Ramsdale to come into and feel like, oh God, I need to perform here. There's going to be points riding on me. I think we are much more conducive to somebody coming in who's maybe been on the fringes for a bit to come in, play their game, and just fall into this kind of machine. Injuries are something to consider. Jorginho, we know that he's been carrying something for a little while. Can he play all of these games in succession without, I think it's a foot injury that they were talking about that came out after the Liverpool game. I think Arteta spoke about it in his post-match press conference. We don't know how severe this is, whether it's ongoing, whether it's healed. I would be fine with taking him out because I think we will need him against Porto. I think we've kind of seen the blueprint of our last few games and how he can work for us, the balance he brings to the base of midfield by letting Declan Rice go, by letting Odegaard go. And I think in terms of our fast, ferocious, suffocating starts, that's the blueprint we need to follow. So I wouldn't be opposed at all to leaving him out. Just saying, put your feet up, drop Declan Rice in, put Kai Havertz maybe in a deeper role. Is there space for Emil Smith-Rowe to come in? Maybe if you want to keep Havertz at 9. And then there's Martinelli as well. I know Arteta spoke about him today in his pre-match press conference and said he was positive. Paraphrasing there because the quote was a bit strange. But if he's maybe not 100%, again, I've got no issue bringing Gabriel Jesus into the side or a Leo Trossard, a Reece Nelson.
You would start Jesus in this game? Like, I mean, do you think he can?
Yeah.
It's a weird one with Jesus, right? Because, like, there's a lot of noise out there that he's being managed, that the knee isn't right, that it may not be right the rest of the season. They have to manage him. And, like, it's tough because right now we have a very, very small cluster of players that we really trust because of how they've been playing.
Mm-hmm.
We have another cluster of players who are very, very, very good, but they're only now just coming back. And I think our trust level in them is variable. All they have to do is step on the pitch and look good again, and that will change. I thought Jesus had some bright moments against Sheffield United. It's just Sheffield United. It would be a huge risk in my mind to start Jesus here when you've got a team that's red hot and scoring goals. I do think Jesus getting another 30 minutes or so in this game and looking good would be huge for us because, as I've said too many times, he's so good in the Champions League just in terms of his record. And I do think if Porto are really going to try to junk up the game, he's one guy who can singularly just beat a couple of guys and create some chaos and open up some space in the final third. So how do you weigh that in terms of, if you give him a full 90, I just think with the knee concerns, you're probably ruling him out for Porto. Like, if you start him, do you want to have him available for that fixture? And if so, does that mean using him maybe from the bench in this game?
I mean, could we probably start Jesus? Yes. Would I start him? No. And I don't think he will start. I think the club have made a very clear and obvious point at managing his recovery, his rehabilitation. I think this knee issue or knee issues have been going on for a little while now, and it's maybe getting to the point where you can start to worry. I'm not saying I know anything. It's just how we feel about it, right? And he looked fine coming on the other day. I think those were important minutes to get into his legs in a basically sealed game that we'd won. It was a non-contest by that point, so Arteta could just tell him, look, go and run around for a bit, try and get a goal. If you can't, just kind of get through it. For me, I think Trossard is kind of the next guy in the pecking order to come in. He played really well at both Burnley and away at West Ham. He kind of gives us flexibility in what we'd like to do on the left side, as a left 8 or as the false 9. He has that nice relationship with Havertz that we saw starting to blossom. So I think it's just good news to have Jesus back and in contention. Would I start him? Probably not, but I think it's just a positive sign that he's there.
Yeah, I agree. I do want to read the quote, by the way, that you referenced that Mikel gave on Martinelli and Bukayo Saka, because it's definitely an interesting one. We got some players back last Monday, and then we had Martinelli and Bukayo with little issues. Here we go. Enjoy this one. But we are pretty positive that hopefully they can be part of that, but we'll have to wait and see how they are tomorrow. He doesn't like to give anything away. I think Saka was ill.
Mm-hmm.
And he played, right? He started. So if he's still ill with the same thing, presumably, first of all, he's, I would think, less ill. I mean, you've been ill. I was ill. Clive was bedridden ill. There's been something going around and it isn't good. And if it's the kind of thing where he really needs to rest and be ready for Tuesday, like, so be it. But I'm inclined to say if he could go an hour last weekend or Monday, or if he didn't go an hour, 45 minutes on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now it's 5 days later. He surely has to be slightly better. So I wouldn't think it'd be something that would keep him out. With Martinelli, there's a cut. Now, a cut can just be, owie, I have a cut. Like when my 8-year-old says, I need a Band-Aid. Or, it can be the kind of cut where parts of the inside of you that are supposed to stay on the inside are pouring out of the outside. Like, I just don't know. And with a cut, what you don't want to do is open it up again or make it where he can't strike the ball the way he wants to. I mean, if it's really painful and he's favoring it, you'd rather have it heal up. And I do think Martinelli obviously is a player that we have more options that we could use to approach handling that position. Obviously, one of them being Trossard, another one potentially being Jesus. I do think if I just had to go and pick a lineup, I would go with the Sheffield United lineup, except I'd take Jorginho out. I'd bring Trossard in, right? Play Trossard at that false 9 position, Kai in the 8, and drop Rice back to the 6. And I think the other thing that gives you potentially is, look, William Saliba never looks terrible. But Ivan Toney, to your point, I think Ivan Toney has given Saliba maybe the hardest time I've seen of any player he's come up against. And I think if you have the Declan Rice's physicality and size back there recovering to kind of be able to get another body on Toney, which is going to be their only danger outlet, so to speak. That's not a phrase, but you know where I'm going with this. I think that could be helpful. So that's probably the lineup I would go with. And I'll just ask you this on the Toney thing. I mean, one thing that made Toney really hard for us to handle is he'd get the ball and then, he'd win the long ball and then he'd play someone in. They don't have the players to play in. They don't have defenders at the back. It's not just that Brentford is struggling. Instead, they're missing so many key players. So do you think this is a situation where, like, you may not look at Brentford as being another Burnley or Sheffield United in name, but in terms of the people that are actually going to be on the pitch, it's more that caliber in terms of what they actually have available. I don't think they're getting any of those players back, is my understanding. So they're really short. All 4 defenders, I think, are out, and Buemo's not available. Like, what's their level really with the players they're going to have available to them?
I think their level is demonstrated quite nicely by the Premier League table, and that's just above the relegation zone. I feel a bit sorry for them because this is a club who have overperformed for a long time. I think based on some good signings, they've got a good manager. They had a settled system that worked on a few key components being present. But when they're all missing, you just can't maintain those levels. And it's not just a few injuries. I mean, they've been without Rico Henry for the whole season, basically, after he suffered a ACL rupture. And he's a huge outlet for them down the left-hand side. They're going to be missing Ethan Pinnock. Again, critical for their structure. He's the leader, the organizer, the voice, the reference point of their back 3, of their whole team. He's going to be missing. Then there's Ben Mee, Aaron Hickey, Brian Mbermo. Again, all injured. And this is just, it's impossible. They are a wounded animal, and this isn't me trying to gloss over anything, or again, there's no complacency running into what I'm saying. This is just the truth. And I feel like we are in a position where we feel confident, we feel fresh, we feel fit. And even if there are 1 or 2 changes into the team, I think we can be confident enough in starting quickly, pressing high, really putting their defense is going to be the definition of makeshift. Okay, so we need to be putting pressure on them straight away. We don't need to give them the opportunity for the out ball. I know they play a front 2 with Tony and Neil Maupay at the moment, who actually hasn't been terrible. And I know he's got some history with Arsenal. But if we do our job right, if we are intense in the press, organised in the press, fluid going forward, I don't think Brentford will be able to handle us. I know that they've got some strong players coming up from the back for set pieces, but so do we, right? We're one of the strongest set piece teams in the league. So I'm just looking here, where can they hurt us? And the list is incredibly short. So I feel confident in us being able to do our thing, basically.
It is funny. I pulled up their fixtures just to kind of reference the struggles they've had. And of course, I forgot their last fixture. They drew Chelsea. So, like, as bad as they've been, they were still a match for Chelsea.
Everyone gets points off Chelsea.
Yeah. I mean, look, the City, they played City at the Etihad and they only lost 1-0 in a game that I watched where, like, I actually don't think City looked that good or that effective. But if you look at it, underlyings, right, like, they produced 0.4 expected goals. City had 2.3. So one of those games where it's 1-0 on the scoreboard, but the scoreline isn't flattering, but the performance probably was pretty dominant. What I will say, as I look through their last recent games, they lost to Tottenham 3-2. They gave away a lot, but they created plenty. They lost to City at home 3-1. Again, they gave away a bit, but they created quite a bit. They beat Wolves away, where they were dominantly the better side, 2-0 victory there. Liverpool 4-1, but they created quite a lot. Then there's the City away game where they were pretty well handled, but only 1-0. West Ham 4-2, a little more even on the underlyings, and then Chelsea 2-2. So like, all right, the results aren't great, but they're creating a decent amount. They're staying competitive in these games, which I think is a credit to them. They're not just like capitulating. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Look, I think overall, my feeling is the way we're playing and the players they're missing and we're at home, it it sets up to be a game where we should be, you would think, quite comfortable. Of course, if you have an eye on Porto and you expect to be comfortable and you make a few extra lineup changes than maybe you ordinarily would, you can get shocked. Because football is weird like that. Manchester United were leading City 1-0 for a long time in a game they had no business even being in. And
But did you
so,
ever feel like United were going to get anything from that game?
no, but you still got to stick the ball in the back of the net, right? I mean, like the funny thing is, because they're flying in fives and sixes and fours right now, Phil, we're not talking about this, but it wasn't that long ago where people like me were trying to tell people who were really mad, hey, we're still pretty good. It's just not going in the net for us. You know what I mean? Like that West Ham game that everybody was furious about. You're only in football, you're always a day away from another one of those 27 shots and 3 expected goals and you drew 1-1 kind of games. So I don't expect that to happen. Of course, I don't want to concern troll. I don't want this to come off as I'm trying to create drama in a game that may not have it. I think the key is, with a big game on the horizon Tuesday, we're already changing our goalkeeper. I think we might rest Jorginho. Maybe we keep Martinelli out if the cut on the foot is a worry. You can start to mix and match a little bit. And, Ivan Toney, who's given us trouble, can be a bit of a headache for us. And all of a sudden, it's a tougher game than you expect. My ultimate feeling is that it won't be. So, there's a lot of things I still want to cover today. So I would just say, I think we can draw a line under that game for the time
Hmm.
being. I do want to ask you just one thing quickly, on Bukayo Saka. Odegaard's playing brilliantly. Declan Rice has been an incredible signing. Our back four is amazing. And Kai Havertz is getting a lot of praise finally, I think, for doing the things that are easier to see when he was always doing the things that are maybe harder to see. But it is the play of Bukayo Saka that, I think is at the core of it, at the heart of it, is the thing that makes us go. He is sort of the beating heart of this team. And it is easy to overlook a 22-year-old who is your chief chance creator, your chief goal scorer, one of your chief ball progressors, plays every game, takes all the rough treatment. He's spending a lot less time on the ground, by the way, and I don't mean that as a, discredit to him that he used to lie on the ground, but like, I think he's avoiding contact more. He's riding challenges better. I wonder if Mikel just had a word in his ear and said, hey, I know they're kicking you, but when you go down, you stay down, like, and stops the game. Like, it tells them to keep doing it. Don't give him the satisfaction that tactic can work. And maybe I'm just making things up, but it seems to me like I don't see him on the ground as much. Maybe he's getting a little more protection from refs. I don't know. Or maybe we've figured out a way to get him more isolated, but I don't know that on this podcast we've spent enough time focusing on the absolutely absurd achievements of Bukayo Saka and what he's doing. So I just want to get your thoughts on, as someone who watches more of the world game and more of the young talent. We saw Vinicius Jr., right, score a beautiful goal
Hmm.
fed to him by another bright young talent in Jude Bellingham in Madrid's not quite so comfortable progression through the next round of the Champions League against RB Leipzig. So where is Bukayo Saka for you in the hierarchy of not just young wide attacking players, but maybe all wide attacking players? And have we not made enough of what he's doing and how special he is?
Yeah, I mean, he's quite comfortably in the top 5 wide options in world football for me, and that's not
Mm.
even close. You could maybe argue that he's in the top 3. Um, Whether you consider Mbappe a wide player or a forward, that comes down to personal preference. But what I love about Bukayo Saka is just the sense of inevitability, and this is priceless. What do you get from Mohamed Salah every week? It's a goal or an assist. What do you get from Cristiano Ronaldo every week and Lionel Messi every week and Neymar every week when he could be bothered to play football? And all of these top players, Luis Suarez, Lewandowski, Harry Kane, these are just names I'm racking off the top of my head. They guarantee you output and end product. And what have we seen from Bukayo Saka this season and throughout most of his Arsenal career, even when he was being played as a left back? It's end product. And yes, he maybe doesn't look as aesthetically pleasing as Phil Foden, who can just do magic things on the half turn and with the ball in an instant, or maybe doesn't have the raw speed that an Mbappe or a Vinicius or a Salah might have had in his prime. But I wouldn't swap him for anybody else. I really wouldn't. And the fact that he was grown right on our doorstep just makes it even better. And I have such a strong paternal feeling for Saka to kind of go in for him and defend him and bat for him at every opportunity. But now I don't, because what can people say? He's scoring or assisting or both every single week. There is no argument left. Can he score in big games? Yes. Does he score to put Arsenal ahead? Yes. Has he scored in the Champions League? Yes. Has he done it for England? Yes. He's 22 years old. Yeah. And I'm always a little bit worried about kicks and niggles and even potentially burnout because he's been playing for 4 years straight. And I look at guys like Ryan Sessegnon, who his body breaks down every 5 minutes when he tries to come back for Spurs, and he was playing as a 17-year-old for Fulham. But that's just me being worried. I don't think Saka worries about that. I don't think Arteta worries about that. We have a world beater on our hands, and I've got no doubt that he'll shake off whatever illness it is he's got, come back into the side and contribute, because that's what he does. That is what he does.
Plays all the time, plays at the same great high level all the time. I do think it is fair to say his start to the season was a little slow by his lofty standards. And I had mentioned this on a prior pod, so I don't want to overdo it, but I think that he was probably carrying something. I think the burst wasn't quite there since Dubai. He's been more of the Saka we expect to see. I think he's adding things to his game. Weird that that's happening to someone who just turned 22 this season, right? That he added something to his game. What are the odds? And I think it's that he's more comfortable going with his right. He's more comfortable going to the byline. I think his delivery from the byline has improved, which is why he's getting more assists. I think he's figured out how to go to the byline first time, right? Half turn or no, just take the ball, step over it and drive to the byline, use his burst to get past someone because they have to shield. It's funny, right? The thing with Ian Robin is Ian Robin used to always come in on his left and everyone knew it, shielded to him left, but you still couldn't stop him getting it on his left and scoring. It was bizarre. Bukayo Saka has some of that, but now he's added that if he sees that your weight is on your inside foot, on your right foot defensively, he's just going to go first time to the byline and you can't recover. So I think it's really fun to watch him develop that. I mean, if you just want to talk stats, goals plus assists this season, it's Salah 24, Haaland 23, Bukayo Saka 21. Now, above all of them is Ollie Watkins, 26. What a season he's having. I mean, take nothing away from him.
Unbelievable.
But phenomenal player. Now, on the underlyings, however, it's, if you want to do XG plus XA, it's Haaland, Salah, Nunez, and then basically a four-way tie. And if you take out people that have played almost no time, basically a three-way tie between Isak, Cole Palmer, and Bukayo Saka. And I think Saka's going to start to eclipse those players, in the form that he's in. Because I think he's just in, absolutely searing, sensational, red-hot form. The thing I want to talk about with Saka too a little bit quickly on the metrics front is his data. His data has just improved a little bit every season, which you'd expect from a young player. But I think this is really interesting. So if you look at, let's go back a couple of seasons, right? His XG, for example, 0.24 per 90, then 0.31 per 90, then 0.32 per 90. This season, 0.47. there's a jump. XA, expected assists per 90, right? 0.16, then 0.23, then 0.24, then 0.33, a jump, right? So his XG plus XA has gone from 0.56 to 0.8, right? There's been a jump this season. And the other thing that's really jumped, he was in that like 2.8 shots, 2.4 shots. He's over 3 shots per 90, Phil. And I think you start to look at the players who are elite in world football as attackers. And I feel like the 3 shots per 90 threshold is kind of one you can look at as an important one, because the players that get over that, they tend to score a lot of goals. They tend to be way up there in their underlying metrics. I really think that what we're seeing now is a Bukayo Saka who is starting to turn the corner into the kind of player he's going to be. And the kind of player he's going to be is a high volume toucher of the ball, progressor of the ball, shooter of the ball, provider of assists. He's got everything in his game. And I want to build on something you said too, which is I think the only thing missing for Saka that's led to him maybe not being talked about in the elite company more, there's this likability thing. He's got a bit of a baby face and he's super likable and he rode an inflatable unicorn once. And so there's this little brother dismissiveness about the way he's talked about, and obviously, to be fair, some of this I think is the defensiveness that came from the horrific racial abuse that he suffered after the penalty miss. So there was like a desire to defend the young lad who went through that. But quietly, when no one was looking, the young lad has turned into like a grown-up and he's a killer. And I just think when we start to lose some of that protecting our young boy mindset and think of him more as a grown-up killer, I think he will rightly be in the conversation with the players that he is not just the equal of, but the better of.
Yeah, I mean, when you see seasoned Premier League defenders bouncing off him, that's not a young boy anymore. I think what's always stood out to me with Saka is first of all, his footballing intelligence, but also the way he uses his body. Even when he was a 18, 19, 20-year-old kind of breaking through and establishing himself in this team, the way he could manipulate his body and also defenders was just amazing. He's just right decision every time. If there's a shot to be taken, he'll take it. If there's a pass to pass, he'll pass it. If there's a run to go across the defender, he'll go across the defender. If he needs to come in and help in build up, he'll come in and help. I just think there's such a mature level of understanding of the game that he just emanates. And if there's a defender that he's smelling blood, for example, poor Austin Trusty, who was put out at left back to try and contain Saka the other day, he knew he had him on toast. And what happened in the first 5 minutes? He got to the byline 3 times. It's just, I have so much respect for how he's developing and maturing. And maybe you're right. I think there is a tendency for us to feel paternal about him and our star boy, our Saka. But this guy's going to be top. He's already top. And out of everybody on that team sheet, who am I expecting goals and assists from every week? It's Saka.
It's Saka. And
So,
often the first goal or the first assist. I
Mhm.
mean, I've seen some Arsenal players who made a hell of a career stat padding, scoring the 4th, scoring the 5th. And by the way, those goals count and they matter. But Bukayo Saka is quite frequently the guy who gets fouled for the penalty that opens the scoring, or takes the penalty to break a tie, or, provides the assist to start the scoring. He was the first one to rip Sheffield United open and make the game feel safe and fun, but before it was safe and fun. And I just think he carries that responsibility. So I wanted to do that because, look, I realized, we're an Arsenal podcast saying an Arsenal player is great, but there are times when I think he actually doesn't get as much praise as he deserves because it's sort of taken for granted. And so you wind up talking about Kai is growing into a special player, or, Declan Rice, the £100 million signing. And meanwhile, here's this academy lad, and I think that's the thing. If you look at these teams that do something special, setting aside the ones that have unlimited, resources, ill-begotten resources, right, of a nation state, Liverpool have Trent Alexander-Arnold, right? Tottenham built their golden generation of winning absolutely nothing on Harry Kane, right? I mean, once upon a time, the Invincibles had Ashley Cole. And I do think it is pretty common that, I mean, we all know about United's class of, what was it, 92? Was that the class? What was the class? Class 92, right? Once upon a time, I think it was standard procedure to have at least a couple, if one or a couple academy kids in a group that developed into a winner. And so for Bukayo Saka to be homegrown is so special and so rare. To think about the Arsenal Academy and realize that we may be looking at potentially the great. I mean, it's not absurd to say he could grow into being the greatest ever Arsenal Academy. Tim's not on the pod, so I don't know how far we go back. And you have guys like Tony Adams who won a word, but like he was an Academy kid, right?
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. But I certainly think he has a chance to get into that conversation in a way that nobody in any recent time has. And so, we want to pump the brakes a little bit, want to give him time, let him develop, but it is special. And I think it should be celebrated. And when you're in a title race, it's so excruciating. You hardly have time to stop and celebrate anything. I think, for example, this dominant run that we're on, never seen anything like it. Just as a final word on that, actually, before we move to City Liverpool, because I want to talk about that game. The Porto tie is an interesting one in a way, because it does have the ability to bring what is an unbelievably high moment in our history, let alone our season, crashing down. And I don't think that will happen. But when you set aside that Champions League loss, like this run since the new year, it's unrivaled. It's unlike anything I've seen. Mikel was sort of asked in his pre-match, presser, is this sort of what you expected to see when you took the team over? Is this, the way you expected us to play? And, I think obviously it's easy to sit here and say, oh yeah, you always expected this is how we'd play. But did you think that this was in the range of outcomes? This kind of dominance, this kind of ceiling? Is this something that you felt that we could achieve? Because I think there was a period there this season where I think a lot of people were starting to question whether all the pieces could come together.
No, I mean, this kind of form, the level that we are playing at the moment, I would never have imagined, let alone within 3 seasons of his first ever managerial job. It's been spoken about this week on a few different podcasts that we can't really lose sight of what has happened here in terms of the project, how quickly we've managed to build a winning culture, a professional culture. We've got some bad eggs out. We've brought some really good players in. We've reduced the wage bill, and now we've given ourselves an opportunity to raise it again. It's been a clinic in having a vision, sticking with somebody you believe in, and being successful in it. And now we are the blueprint. The amount of mental gymnastics I see on social media from United fans, from Chelsea fans, even Liverpool, now that they replace Klopp with whoever they go for, Xabi Alonso, Ruben Amorim, we are the blueprint for change and transition. And I really can't speak highly enough of Edu and Arteta, even Mertesacker, the leadership team, because this is the most difficult thing to do in football. Because we were, I'm not going to say in danger of falling away after a few bad seasons, but it could have easily gone that way. A few more seasons out of the Champions League and we were in trouble. So we really had to go and believe in Arteta and what he was doing, and he's done it. And I think we should be enjoying this, because there is a tendency to kind of watch the Premier League table every living moment and Liverpool's results and City's results. And it's a shame, because you can't drop any points now. This is the standard that we're at, especially this season. You cannot drop a single point. Other teams cannot drop any points. And every weekend we go into the fixtures with a huge intake of breath at what could happen. And then on Monday, we're just like deflated again because everybody's won. But just enjoy what is happening here, because regardless of whether we achieve what we want to achieve, both domestically and in Europe, we are watching amazing football on a weekly basis with players that we love. And just think back to where we were 3 or 4 years ago, and that was not the case. Yeah. So just really enjoy it. I am. I know I am.
I think I read this is the first time at this stage of the season 3 teams have been over 60 points, which is,
There you go.
it tells you everything about the level. Um, and I mean, I get that tension makes it hard to enjoy anything because it's agonizing. Um, let's take a beat. We'll talk about City Liverpool. We're going to talk about a couple of transfer targets, and actually, Mikel had a really interesting comment about transfers in his presser, so I want to ask you about that. But first, I need to tell you that mental health is health. It is not some weird type of health that only people who are in crisis need to think about. It's something all of us need to think about. And this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp because BetterHelp is therapy. It's therapy that's accessible, that's affordable, that's available when you need it, where you need it, right from home at the time you need. I think for me, having done it, I can vouch for the importance of engaging in therapy just to get back on a good, steady track. The thing that's weird about mental health, right, is like sometimes you're in crisis and you need a professional, and that's really important. Sometimes you're just getting off track and maybe there's a crisis down the line, but if you can get back on track, you can avoid it. I think the reason a lot of people don't do therapy is it's already hard, right? I already go to the gym and I already go to work and I already go pick up my kids and I already go drive to these activities. I don't have time to go somewhere else, or the office where I'd have to go is too far away, or I didn't click with that therapist and the next one is way far away. This thing you can do when you need, where you need, affordably, camera on, camera off, you choose. So give mental health a thought for a minute. Consider how much more fulfilled and happy you can be, socially, professionally, personally, and give it a try. Find your social sweet spot with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/vision today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/vision. BetterHelp, do it now. And I want to tell you quickly about NordVPN. NordVPN is a tool that I use constantly. And I think, there are a lot of problems that you might run into when you're surfing the internet. You might have the issue of being worried about your privacy. You might have an issue worrying about the safety of the links you're clicking. You certainly might have an issue of geofencing and not being able to access the content you want. There's nothing more frustrating than when you're on social media and like, oh, check out this amazing goal. And then it's like, this video is not available in your area. Or you want to watch match of the day. You want to watch a game and it's not available in your area, right? Well, the solution is NordVPN. NordVPN has threat protection. NordVPN has privacy protection. NordVPN lets you browse from the region you want to browse in. And by doing that, you can see the content you want to see. You may even be able to save money by signing up for content in another region where it's less expensive. We happen to have a really, really good NordVPN offer that they're giving to us, which I'm pretty excited about. So you can grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision to get 2 years with a discount and 4 extra months plus gifts. Okay, that's a discount, 4 bonus months plus gifts. And remember, there's a 30-back money guarantee, so it's risk-free. Try it. See what you think. Do it now. Remember, this deal is for US, UK, Australia, and Canada. If you're in another region, it'll be another deal for you, but that one that I mentioned is available there. Do it now. Phil, is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Nailed it. Okay. City Liverpool. It's a big one. Let's not spend too much time on this because we're not the City podcast. There probably isn't one because they don't have fans. We're not the Liverpool podcast because the accents aren't right. But you could talk. Look, I know draw is the best outcome. You could talk me into the idea that a Liverpool win is an okay outcome as well. Now, if Liverpool fans listen to this, they're going to shout at me. That's fine. I'm used to being shouted at by all kinds of fans. But my thesis is they have a lot of fixtures coming up. They are the ones struggling with the most injuries at the moment. And I think they are the team that is flying closest to the sun in terms of kind of getting away with it in their style of play. They give more away than City and Arsenal in terms of what the opposition can create. We saw them struggle against Forest, and to be fair, they're missing a lot of players. So I'm not saying they're not a great team. Klopp is an incredible manager. But I could see a world where City losing to Liverpool, then going into the game against us, feeling very must win. If you remember, when we went to the Etihad last season, it was very much on the heels of some disappointing results. And it switched from City need to win it to stay in contact with the title to Arsenal need to win it or their season is over. And I think that switch psychologically really damaged us going into the Etihad. Now, with the team we brought there, I'm not sure we were going to get anything anyway. But I would love to go to the Etihad where City felt that it was a must win. that if they did not beat us, they lose touch with the title. It also would give us the potential opportunity to draw that game and I think still win the title just on Liverpool potentially not being able to maintain their level due to injuries and fixtures and the way they play. So am I overthinking? Is it obviously a draw best for us? We can end the weekend top of the table if we win and they draw. How do you see that game going and how do you want it to go?
I would probably like a draw just because I think it gives us a bit more control of the situation. I think at the moment we are not in control. And this is one of the games for both teams that I really look at and think this is where they can drop points. Yeah, especially at Anfield. There's just this weird feeling about Anfield at the moment where, like you said, they're riding high on Jurgen Klopp. He's leaving. There's just something that keeps seeing them through games. I mean, he's an incredible manager. The way he's been able to maximize his resources in the last few weeks has been incredible. And I'm not saying they've put in complete performances like Arsenal have, where we've limited the opposition to 0.2 xg every game, because they haven't. But they've been missing Trent, Alisson, Nunez, Jota, Salah. That's like 5 key players that they've been missing, and they're still winning games. So, I mean, they were playing Joe Gomez as a 6, for God's sake, against Nottingham Forest. So that shows you where they are in terms of fitness, injuries, and they're still winning games. So I would just like that momentum to be halted slightly, and for City's momentum to be halted slightly as well, because regardless of how the other teams go in, or City, I'll say City, regardless of how City go into the game at the Etihad, I fancy us. Not to win, but I think we can give a good account of ourselves regardless of whatever the outcome needs to be. So I'm a lot more confident in us and our ability to get results when we need them, that we don't need to think about the psychology of other teams. And in this particular title race, in this particular moment, I would prefer a draw. That is my thinking. But it's so difficult because sometimes you can talk yourself into a City win. Sometimes you can talk yourself into a Liverpool win.
I can't talk myself into a City win. That I can't do. Because I think if City beat Liverpool, I probably believe at that point that we have to win at the Etihad. I know we don't mathematically have to. It boils down to this. If you said to me, one of these 3 teams is going to just surprisingly drop more points than you'd expect during the run-in, right now I'd have it as Liverpool. And it's not a disrespect to them. It's that defensively they've definitely been, like, if you look at the league in terms of XG, and I get for some people that's just not how you look at the league. They're like, that's an imaginary stat. Fine. You can look at it as however you want to look at it, but I'm going to look at it at XG allowed for a second. You have Arsenal at 18, City at 25, Liverpool at 33, right? Liverpool, I think their attack is sensational and they kind of play the all-out attack approach, but they do give more away. And we know that football is a high variance kind of sport, and that they could have and very well should have dropped points to Forest, right? I mean, that should have happened. I think they're very fortunate there. And so I think as I look at their fixtures, right, they still play the Merseyside Derby away. They still have a lot of Europa League to attend to today. In fact, they're away in Prague. They still have United in the FA Cup. They have United away in the league. They have Brighton. They have Fulham away, West Ham away, Spurs at home, Villa away. None of those are bankers, I'd say. Now, look, we've got probably the hardest of fixtures of all the teams. I mean, we have some really tough ones. But because we give so little away, I fancy us. And fingers crossed, at the moment, we don't have the kind of injury crisis they have. And I don't know when they're going to get healthy. Is Alisson going to play this season? I don't know. I saw a rumor that Kelleher was injured. I don't know if that's been corroborated or not, but that he might have a problem. So
I haven't seen anything about that.
Okay, so maybe not. But I think what I'm saying, Phil, is City are the one team that I know could go ahead and just win every game they play the rest of the season. They just have that in their locker, and they look like a team that could do that. We look like a team that could do that. The team to me that looks least likely to do that is Liverpool. And so I would love to go to the Etihad with a lead over City in the table and a bit of the pressure on them. But I acknowledge that if we then don't win it, suddenly Liverpool could be looking at a 5-point lead at the top of the table. And even if they're not the best, they've got margin for error. Do you think Liverpool can win this game? I mean, I realize Anfield is a special place, and we've experienced that, but Salah will probably be back is my guess. I don't know what Trent's availability looks like. I don't know if any of their other injured players are returning. And City are in such hot form. They have that extra day of rest. I don't know if Klopp will play anyone against Prague. We don't know as of this moment. It feels like if Liverpool are going to lose at home, this is probably the game where it would happen. How do you see the game playing out?
I mean, City made 7 changes as well midweek against Copenhagen. So
yeah, but Haaland started, and didn't De Bruyne start? I think. Am I wrong about that?
no, he didn't.
Definitely.
Oscar Bob started.
Oscar Bob started. Yeah, Haaland plays every game. He's a machine. Yeah.
Yeah, but Foden was rested. Kyle Walker was rested. Ruben Diaz was rested. Bernardo Silva was rested. Ake was rested. Sorry, not Ruben Diaz, John Stones. So
yeah.
You kind of look at them now and you think they are doing that frustratingly inevitable, annoying post-New Year run where they just look invincible and they just find ways to win games. They've got 2 game breakers in De Bruyne and Haaland, both back from injury. I mean, how De Bruyne has just managed to come back and look this good is just a joke. He's a joke. And as long as he's fit, they have a chance to win any game. The same with Haaland. I know he's had a few big misses in recent weeks, but he's still scoring goals. So defensively, I'm not sure about City, to be honest. I think they can be
countered
vulnerable.
On?
Yeah. Especially when running back towards their own goal. I think they can be vulnerable.
United should have punished them, by the way. Like, I know they had 2 shots the whole game, but they should have probably had 3 goals in that first half if Marcus Rashford could trap a ball.
Yeah, and even yesterday against Copenhagen, there were a few sloppy defensive giveaways in bad areas, and I as inevitable as they feel in an attacking sense, and in terms of the results that they can put together or string together, I don't feel that sense of how are we going to create anything against City that I felt, especially last season. I mean, they were a force last season, but this season I'm not so sure. Liverpool, it's just difficult. I think they ride on such a high emotion. I think Darwin Núñez will be back. I think Salah will be back. Endo will come in and anchor the midfield, I would imagine. Robertson's there. I'm not sure about Trent. But they've got Konate and Van Dijk there. I think Kelleher will be in goal. So they're not going to be at their best, but they will be in better shape than they have been. And
Núñez is such an X factor, Phil. Like, I know it's fun to laugh at Núñez because he's chaotic and he doesn't always do.
I really like him.
He's just so good. He's
too
strong and too fast and too chaotic. He breaks games open in a way that I don't know. Even Haaland doesn't break games open the way Núñez does. He always finds a way to create chaos. Yeah.
These strikers are always the most dangerous ones. The ones where they miss 10 chances in a game and you just see them laughing when the camera pans to them, and it's just like water off a duck's back. They're going to go again. They're going to go again and again. And it's maybe a lazy comparison to his compatriot Edison Cavani, but they were exactly the same. Cavani would miss like 5 easy chances in a game and still leave the pitch with 2 goals. And I just feel that way with Darwin, who is a physical threat. He's just constantly running the channels, occupying defenders. He's good in the air. He can score with his left, score with his right. When people were laughing at him, when he went through a bit of a dry spell, I was like, just wait. Klopp is the perfect manager for this guy. He was always ready to explode, and he's not always neat. He's not always tidy, but he was just so clearly going to be dangerous in the Premier League. So clearly. And that's kind of what I think about Gyökeres. Maybe we'll come back onto that later.
We're about to come to that. So the only thing I was going to say is so a few things. He's alone with Salah and Haaland as the only 3 players in the Premier League that have over 1 expected goal plus expected assist. Um, remember when I said that 3 shots per 90 is sort of a good cutoff, and when forwards get over that, that starts to get you into the elite territory,
Hmm.
especially for wide players. Maybe slightly different for attackers. I mean, for forwards, but Erling Haaland. So I told you Bukayo is now over 3. Erling Haaland takes 4.2 shots per 90, which is wild. Nunez takes 5 shots. So this guy's just, I mean, and you can say, well, he needs it because he's, they never go in. But like, yeah, he is a unique creator of chaos. And I just don't think you can keep him out of a game. I have a lot of time for a player like that. So quick prediction. What do you expect in this game?
Goals.
Yeah, for sure. There's no way around it.
I think it could be a 2-2 draw. That is my feeling at the moment. I think Liverpool will start fast, maybe get an early goal, and then as City settle, they will kind of come back into it, and they've got such a threat with those two that we mentioned, De Bruyne and Haaland, and I think they will kind of cancel each other out. So I'm going for a 2-2, and I hope for a draw because that would be the best result for us.
Klopp gave a really interesting interview after a City game once where he was very frustrated. He said they have a way of making you play long, right? Where you wind up sitting deep and kicking it long and you just stop playing your football. And it was a game I think they drew. They were losing early and they came back and drew it. And he said, we finally started to play our football and we came back in the game. What I think is unique about Liverpool is I actually think with the Darwin Nunez and with the delivery of the Trent, you can play long and you can hurt City. And so I have a weird feeling that Liverpool have an ability to test City's jaw with counterattack defense, like that recovery defense or rest defense, whatever the hell you call it, in a way that other teams don't. I have a weird feeling that the Anfield magic might happen. We might have to be listening to more Klopp, slobbery praise this week. But I also don't think it'd be the end of the world. I really don't. I think Liverpool could go and beat City and then turn around and lose to Fulham away. I think they are that kind of sort of difficult team to evaluate. Obviously, I'd go for the draw. And if it's a draw and if we're able to do our business on Saturday, we go into almost 20 days without football at the top of the table. I mean, we may not stay there depending on what happens in the intervening period, but that's a good place to be. And it will definitely, I'll tell you this much. Paul's been whining that we don't get the coverage we deserve as title contenders, but if we come out of this weekend sitting top of the table, we will probably be starting to get talked about. So we will no longer be under the radar. Quickly, because I don't want to go too long today, and we'll have the 3 big questions with Clive and Tim tomorrow. Gyökeres, Ferguson, Sesko, Nico Williams. Rank them for me in terms of, before I do that, let me read the quote, because I said I'd read the quote, because Mikel had a quote about this, and I just thought it was interesting, because like, sometimes he just doesn't give anything away. He'll say like, transfers aren't my thing. Like he was asked about contracts, right? Because Tomiyasu, I think, is maybe going to get a new contract. We'll cover that when it's officially announced. But he said, that's not my business. Edu can handle that. But he said, if our goal scoring form changes his thinking about whether we need a forward in the summer. This is interesting. No. The plans that we have for the summer are very clear, and we're done almost at the start of the season. Understanding what we can have, the contract situations that we have with some players, and how we want to improve and maintain the level of the team, this certainly has not changed anything. I think that is a really unexpected response from Mikel. Not to say that, I thought Arsenal were all over the place and had no idea what we're doing, but that's a pretty definitive statement that we know what we're going to do, and it's locked up. So maybe a quick reaction to that, then we can talk about the 4 targets specifically.
Super interesting, and I don't doubt it for a second. I know that they are very direct and organized in how they scout players. I think once Arteta has an idea of who he wants, I think there's been a clear MO in how they chase those players and how they stick with those players. We've obviously had to change our approach slightly when it came to Caicedo, Mudryk, these guys, but what happened next? Jorginho came in, someone we followed for a long time. Trossard, again, the club have a long history of following him. I think we're just a lot more organised and assured with ourselves, and based on how we've recruited in the last few years. And yeah, super exciting because I think he knows that this summer especially is the one that takes us there. You know, we've done an amazing job to be where we are. The trajectory of the team has been incredible. But why did we make such a big deal about reducing the wage bill? It was so that we could go big again with players that we wanted and not a 32-year-old Mesut Ozil who can't be bothered anymore, or a 33-year-old Aubameyang who can't time keep anymore. So I think they know, Arteta knows, Edu knows, the club know that this summer is the chance to just add one or two pieces to really, really take us there. And it doesn't surprise me at all that they've got the strikers or the players in mind that they would like.
Yeah. So then let's cover them. Gyökeres, Ferguson, Sesko, Williams. Who do you prefer?
I'd prefer Gyökeres.
Okay.
And I said him in my Director of Football podcast, maybe when there wasn't so much noise about him. Humble brag. I just think, to be honest, there are a lot of parallels with Darwin Núñez to Gyökeres. I know he's a little bit older, 2 or 3 years older.
The underlyings on Núñez were quite a bit better in the Portuguese league, to the people that care about that.
Okay, but I mean in terms of their journeys and their trajectories, Darwin Núñez was playing in the second division of Spain for Almeria.
Mm-hmm.
He was picked up by Benfica, had 2 seasons there, and bang, £75 million. And I know that Gyökeres is a little bit older, but he was at Coventry, picked up by Sporting. He's had a really good season there. Well, he's exploded, really. And this could be a summer where it's just one season, bang, 75 million again. And I'm not saying he is the perfect striker. He can be a little bit untidy on the ball, look a little bit clunky. But in terms of what he can offer us and how different his profile and his skill set is to our current options, I really like him. I really like what he can give us. I think Evan Ferguson is a huge talent, but he's 19. And he hasn't even been scoring or playing consistently for Brighton. There have been injury issues. There's a lot of development to come in his game for me, both physically, tactically, mentally, you know, in terms of being able to come in and contribute to an Arsenal side that are hopefully challenging for the league and the Champions League. Benjamin Sesko, again, someone I've followed for a little while now. He's come through the Red Bull lineage.
Missed a bunch of chances in midweek, didn't he?
He's a super interesting profile. Tall guy who can run in behind. He's got good technique. I just think, again, a little bit raw for what we need. He'd be cheaper than the other two. I think he'd probably be around 40 million or 45 million based on...
quite a bit cheaper.
Yeah, so maybe they could look at him and say, we see a lot of raw ingredients here that we could help to mold and shape, and overall he'd be a striker that we can do something with, and I completely understand that thinking. But again, I'm just thinking of people who can come in and contribute now and kind of be a real shot in the arm based on what they offer. And I just see Gyökeres. I like him. There is a presence and aura to what he brings. I think if we went away to City, he is someone that we could sit on the halfway line, kind of how like we've been using Kai Havertz in recent weeks, and just say, go and run. Go and put your elbow into Ruben Diaz. Go and fight for a ball in the corner. Go and hold it up and help us get up the pitch. I think there is elite physical potential that would translate really nicely to the Premier League. And he's got good goal numbers, good shot numbers, good assist numbers. He's been very active in the press. You know, he's a very active guy. He doesn't just sit there like an Ivan Toney and walk around until the ball's active or the game requires him to be active. He's constantly buzzing around. He can drift left. He can drift right. I don't know. I'm not saying he's the full package, but based on what I see now in the market, particularly the striker market, which is so barren with proven options, if we are going to take a gamble, I think we could do a lot worse. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you look at a situation where when we go to the Etihad, depending on availability, there's a chance that Emil Smith-Rowe, Reece Nelson, and Eddie Nketiah not only don't get on the pitch to play, they may not get on the bench. So that's the level now.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie Nketiah started, 11 Premier League games for us? Might not make the bench. Emil Smith-Rowe might not make the bench. Reece Nelson delivered one of the best moments we've experienced in many years, might not make the bench. So you can't spend 80 million or 100 million on a guy who you think could slot into the group. You know what I mean? I do think that there is an argument that I maybe just run it back with Trossard, Kai, and Jesus. Maybe you let Martinelli occasionally try to play through the middle. I still think you could do that. And you go get a Nico Williams, or Pedro Neto if you can tolerate the injury risk. I mean, what do you think about that, Phil, that another wide attacker who maybe you feel a little more confident that the value and the talent are a match? Because look, Evan Ferguson might wind up being the one where 3 years from now we're going, remember that time we weren't sure we should get Evan Ferguson after his second 40-goal season? But he is 19, and the reason you buy a 19-year-old is because he's 35 million now. You know what you do if he has a 40-goal season? You spend the 120 million on him. But if he's 120 million now, what the hell are we doing? You know what I mean? Like the reason you buy him at 19 is he's so much cheaper than he's going to be at 22. But it doesn't sound like that's the case. And that's the problem. I feel like these guys, a lot of times now, it's like Højlund. It's like what United paid for Højlund. United paid the full fare for a guy who hadn't quite shown he was the full player yet. And there's a lot of that going around. So what do you think about just the idea as a last point here of go with a wide player where you think the value and the talent are more of a match and run it back with what we've got through the middle?
I think we need a wide man and a striker regardless, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
And it's becoming increasingly clear to me that Nico Williams could be the best option on the market. I'm a huge fan of Pedro Neto. I think he's amazingly gifted, a one-man counter-attack at times when he wants to be and when he needs to be. Can play on both sides, can shoot off both feet. I think he's electric. I love him as a player, but I'm aware that there is a big market for him in the Premier League. Tottenham are interested, United are interested, and if Wolves want 80 million, I'm reluctant to go close to that, to be honest. I would be capped at 60 million, and I wouldn't go a pound, a penny over that. And Nico Williams, for me, is very similar to Pedro Neto in how he can play both sides, in how two-footed he is, that raw pace, the technical quality, the ability to beat a defender. And he is £45 million. So, or maybe even less. So I think there will be a market for Williams as well. I know Chelsea were reportedly interested this week, but...
Well, it's just whoever we're linked with.
Yeah, is anyone going to touch Chelsea with a 10-foot pole? Their finances came out, by the way, over the last 24 hours, and they are...
Fooked.
Bad. Yeah, bad. They've lost over 600 million.
Just the 600 million?
Well, yeah. So yeah, I would be leaning towards Nico Williams with each passing week. I think he's had a great season at Athletic, contributing consistently in La Liga. He'll probably go to the Euros with Spain this summer. The release clause is right there. Can we give him a good pitch? Yes, I believe so.
Okay. I think we leave it there. That's a good chat for today. 3 big questions with Clive and Tim tomorrow on the Patreon, and we're getting close to Phil having his pod, which you'll be hearing more about here, and we can't wait to support a big weekend for Arsenal to potentially top the table, and then we can start looking ahead to Porto. But don't fall into the trap. Don't look ahead to Porto until we do the business against Brentford. Phil, thanks so much. Phil's on Twitter at _Phil Costa. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you as always for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And my name is Elliot. You can block me on Twitter. And Gunner, we love you, and we'll talk to you after Arsenal 10, Brentford 0.